He was an exile in a foreign land, a captive in the heart of the world's most powerful empire. But while kings and kingdoms rose and fell around him, his faith remained unshakable. You may know the story of Daniel in the lion's den, a testament to a courage that stared death in the face without flinching. But the story of his survival is only half of the truth. This is also the story of a prophet, a man to whom God revealed the secret tapestry of history, a man who saw terrifying visions of the end of the world and the ultimate triumph of a divine kingdom. The tale of his courage in the lion's den is legendary. But before that, there was a test of fire involving his 3 friends, and a king's terrifying dream that only Daniel could interpret. We will journey with him through the courts of mad kings and proud emperors to reveal not only his acts of faith, but the strange and terrifying apocalyptic visions he was given, what he saw in the dead of night, for great beasts rising from the seas, a prophecy that has been debated for thousands of years, and may reveal the future of our own world. This is a story of unwavering faith in a faithless world. If you're ready to explore one of the most courageous and prophetic books of the Bible, make sure you subscribe to our channel and activate the notifications, because you won't want to miss a single part of this incredible saga. Our story begins in the ashes of a fallen kingdom. Jerusalem had been conquered by the Babylonian Empire, and its brightest and best were carried off into exile. Among them were 4 young men from the royal family of Judah: Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah. Chosen for their intelligence and noble birth, they were to be indoctrinated into the culture of Babylon, to serve in the court of the most powerful man on earth, King Nebuchadnezzar. Their first test was a quiet one. They were offered the rich food and wine from the king's own table, but to eat it would be to defile themselves and break the laws of their God in an act of quiet courage. Daniel resolved to remain pure, and the 4 young men chose to eat only vegetables and drink only water. It was their first stand, a declaration that even in captivity, their allegiance was not to Babylon, but to the God of Israel. The true test of Daniel's divine gift came in the dead of night. King Nebuchadnezzar had a dream that troubled his spirit so much he could not sleep. He summoned all the magicians, enchanters, and astrologers of his kingdom and gave them an impossible task. They were not to just interpret his dream, but to first tell him what the dream was. When they inevitably failed, the enraged king ordered the execution of every wise man in Babylon, including Daniel and his friends. Faced with this death sentence, Daniel did not panic. He calmly asked the king for time, and then he and his friends prayed to the God of heaven to reveal the mystery. That night, the secret was revealed to Daniel in a vision. He was brought before the king and giving all glory to God. He described the king's dream: a great, dazzling statue with a head of gold, a chest and arms of silver, belly and thighs of bronze, legs of iron, and feet of iron mixed with clay, which was then shattered by a rock that grew into a mountain and filled the whole earth. Daniel then gave the interpretation. The statue represented a succession of earthly kingdoms that would rise and fall, but in the end, God himself would set up a kingdom that would never be destroyed. Daniel's friends would soon face their own, more fiery trial. King Nebuchadnezzar, in an act of supreme arrogance, built a golden statue 90 feet high and commanded that every person in his empire must bow down and worship it at the sound of the music. The penalty for refusal was to be thrown into a blazing furnace. But Daniel's friends, now known by their Babylonian names, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, refused to bow. They were dragged before the furious king. Their response became a legendary declaration of faith. "If we are thrown into the blazing furnace," they said, "the God we serve is able to deliver us from it. But even if he does not, we want you to know, your majesty, that we will not serve your gods or worship the image of gold you have set up." Enraged, the king ordered the furnace to be heated 7 times hotter than usual. But when the 3 men were thrown into the fire, they were not consumed. Instead, the king looked in astonishment and saw 4 men walking around in the flames, unbound and unharmed, and the 4th, he said, looked like a son of the gods. King Nebuchadnezzar was a man who learned his lessons the hard way. His pride led him to have another dream, this time of a great tree that reached to the heavens, providing food and shelter for all, until a heavenly messenger commanded it to be chopped down. Once again, only Daniel could interpret its meaning. With a heavy heart, Daniel told the king that he was the tree, and that he would be driven away from people and would live like a wild animal for 7 years, until he acknowledged that the Most High is sovereign over all kingdoms on earth. A year later, as the king stood on the roof of his palace, boasting about his own power, the prophecy came true. He was driven from his palace, his hair growing like the feathers of an eagle, and his nails like the claws of a bird. Only after 7 years, when he finally lifted his eyes to heaven and praised the Most High, was his sanity and his kingdom restored. What do you think is a greater test of faith? A sudden, fiery trial, or the slow, constant pressure to compromise in a foreign culture? Let me know your thoughts in the comments, because Daniel is about to face his own ultimate test. Years passed, Nebuchadnezzar died, and his empire began to crumble. His grandson, Belshazzar, now sat on the throne. One night, he threw a great banquet for 1,000 of his nobles. In a drunken, sacrilegious act, he ordered that the gold and silver goblets taken from the temple in Jerusalem be brought out, so he and his guests could drink from them, praising their own gods of gold and silver. In that moment, the fingers of a human hand appeared and began to write a cryptic message on the palace wall. The king's face turned pale with terror. Once again, the wise men of Babylon were powerless. Finally, the queen remembered Daniel, and the old prophet was brought out of obscurity. He read the words, "Mene, mene, tekel parsin," and he gave the interpretation. God had numbered the days of his reign and brought it to an end. He had been weighed on the scales and found wanting. His kingdom was divided and given to the Medes and Persians. That very night, Belshazzar was slain, and the mighty Babylonian Empire fell. A new empire rose, the Medo-Persian Empire, and a new king, Darius, sat on the throne. Daniel, now an old and respected statesman, was appointed as one of 3 administrators over the entire kingdom. And he so distinguished himself that the king planned to set him over the whole realm. But his integrity and excellence inspired a deep jealousy in the other officials. They searched for grounds to charge him, but could find none. So they devised a cunning legal trap. They persuaded the king to issue an irrevocable decree. For the next 30 days, anyone who prayed to any god or human being other than the king would be thrown into the lioness den. They knew Daniel's unwavering habit of prayer. Daniel learned of the decree, but he did not change his routine. He went home to his upstairs room, where the windows opened toward Jerusalem, and 3 times a day, he got down on his knees and prayed, giving thanks to his God, just as he had done before. His faith was not something to be hidden. It was an open act of defiance against a wicked law. The trap was sprung. Daniel was arrested and brought before the king. Darius was deeply distressed, but he was bound by his own unchangeable law, gave the order, and Daniel was thrown into the lion's den. "May your God, whom you serve continually, rescue you," the king cried out. A stone was brought and placed over the mouth of the den, sealed with the king's own signet ring. Daniel's sacrifice was now complete. He was entombed with hungry beasts, his life offered up as a testament to his faith. The great conflict was not a battle of swords, but a silent night of trust. A test of whether his God was truly the master of all creation, even over the most fearsome of predators. The king returned to his palace and spent his sleepless night, fasting and refusing any entertainment, his heart hoping for a miracle. At the first light of dawn, the king hurried to the lion's den. "Daniel, servant of the living God," he called out in an anxious voice, "has your God, whom you serve continually, been able to rescue you from the lions?" The victory came with Daniel's reply from the den. "My God sent his angel, and he shut the mouths of the lions. They have not hurt me." The king was overjoyed. Daniel was lifted from the den, and not a scratch was found on him. The tragedy then fell upon his accusers. At the king's command, the men who had falsely accused Daniel were arrested and, along with their wives and children, were thrown into the lion's den. Before they even reached the floor of the den, the lions overpowered them and crushed all their bones. The justice of God was swift and total. With his faith proven through fire and lions, the story of Daniel now pivots. Revealing the second part of the title's promise, we now look into the mind of the prophet. During the reigns of these kings, God gave Daniel a series of terrifying and profound visions about the future of the world. In one, he saw 4 great beasts rising from the sea. The first was like a lion with eagle's wings. The second was like a bear raised up on one of its sides. The third was like a leopard with 4 wings and 4 heads. The fourth was a terrifying, dreadful beast with large iron teeth that crushed and devoured its victims. These beasts represented the great empires of history: Babylon, Medo-Persia, Greece, and a final powerful empire, Rome. But then the vision shifted to the heavenly court, where the Ancient of Days took his seat on a throne of flaming fire. And Daniel saw one like a son of man, coming with the clouds of heaven. And he was given authority, glory, and sovereign power. All nations and peoples of every language worshipped him. His dominion is an everlasting dominion that will not pass away. Daniel's life was a testament to unwavering courage and faith in a world that demanded compromise. But his book is a testament to the sovereignty of God over all of human history. The same God who could shut the mouths of lions and save men from a fiery furnace is the God who raises up empires and brings them to ruin according to his own divine plan. Daniel's story is a powerful reminder that even in the darkest times of exile and oppression, when earthly kingdoms seem all-powerful, God is still on his throne. His life gives us a blueprint for how to live with integrity in a hostile culture. And his visions give us the ultimate hope that one day, all earthly kingdoms will pass away, and the kingdom of the Son of Man will reign forever. What do you find more inspiring? Daniel's acts of faith, or his prophetic visions? Share your thoughts below. And if this journey into prophecy and courage amazed you, please subscribe to our channel for more deep dives into the Bible's most powerful stories. If you want to explore the story of another man who faced a mad king, you need to watch the video on your screen about King Saul.